Hey, everybody. I'm just going to give everybody a couple minutes to log on. I know that many of you just got done watching Governor Whitmer give her address. So I'm going to probably give about 2 or 3 minutes here. So feel free if you need to go do something or go get something, you can do that now. If you would, over here in the chat box, I guess we'll call it sign in. Let me know who's watching and whose parent you are, just so that I know who you are with, who your student is. I'm gonna probably be trying to answer a few texts while we're here. People are always asking questions, how to log in and all that good stuff. So I'll tell people to just look for my channel. If anybody asks you, just look for my channel and it'll show up there. Checking to see who's in. I got maybe 6 or 7 so far. I got 14 viewers. Not everybody's signed in. It's not super important that you check in, but just essentially, if someone asks a question that I won't be able to get to, that I can be ready to text them back later or somehow get a hold of them to make sure that we are all there. I'm aware that some of you, it's just going to be the parent who is viewing or participating, but in some of you, it's the whole family, and so that's good too. Again, if you just joined us, I'm going to wait probably 1 to 2 more minutes to get as many people in there in the chat as we can to keep everybody up to date. So I don't want to restart after saying some important things in the first few minutes. We're up to 19 different viewers. That might be a few families that have more than one device viewing. So we'll wait for just another moment or two there. Can share a few things while we're waiting for the last few people to come in. For all of you who have been following me, whether it's just on YouTube or through Remind, thank you so much for keeping communication open. I just want you to know, a couple of you have said things like, I hate to bother you, or just you don't need to put any of those qualifiers on your questions and comments. Always keep them coming. Do your best with what you can and ask me with the rest. And I'll be more than happy to help you out as we get started into the video tonight. All right, well, we're going to get rolling. If you just listened to Governor Whitmer and you heard her announcement this morning, I think it was like 10 or 11 o'clock this morning, she did make it official. The announcement that we thought was coming did come, that the rest of the school year is going to be not in school, but at home. I know that you also got an email from the school district that detailed a little bit of that as well. So if you haven't yet, check your email. Mrs. Denowith has sent an email that talks about continuing the food services and trying to continue meal services, including the ones from the food from Gleaners, as well as the academic things that we're going to continue to try to work through. If you haven't yet, go to our district website. And so this is run through the MISD, and on there, on the line of buttons, one of them, it just says COVID-19, and it has an FAQ, frequently asked questions site, that you want to check it out. It's got all kinds of good stuff. To be honest with you, the last update to that page is probably about 1 week old, but it still has lots of good information. So I'm sure that as now this big change today has been made, there'll be some more updates to that page, but continually you can keep going there. One of the great things about that site and that tab in that site as well for the district is a lot of links to things. And so if you ever forget how to get somewhere, or what the address is that you're searching for, you can look for it there. First things first, and I want to talk about specifically for Pinewood and Pinewood 5th grade, especially for my class. I know we've got some people from Mrs. Clark's class along with us here, but 97% of what I'm going to say applies to Mrs. Clark's class as well. And so you can listen in and know that almost all this is for you. First is the schedule. Tomorrow is Friday, and the day after that would have begun your spring break. and twofold. Number one, to give parents a little bit of a break from the role that they've had to take over the last couple weeks and helping with their kids with their school. That parents are going to get a little break from that. The second one is that teachers are going to have a little bit of more time to themselves to start planning and to start preparing. In fact, they have set up that actually next week, which is the week that starts with April 6th, is going to be considered spring break for both teachers and for students and parents. And then the week that we come back, April 13th, you will have a plan that looks pretty similar to what we've been doing. Now, I know that when we sent you home on that last day that we were at Pinewood, we gave you a printed copy and you had a Ziploc bag with your SMJ and a copy of Hatchet and some other papers in there. That paper and that plan expires tomorrow. And so you're going to be looking at 1 week when you come back of similar types of activities. We'll be using a lot of website type stuff. We'll be doing some things together. And that's that first week of April 13th. So continued learning, reinforcing concepts that we've already done, practicing things that we've already covered this year will be our major focus for that week of April 13th. Then the week of April 20th will really kind of begin our fourth quarter objectives. So the things that are part of the fifth grade curriculum that a kid is supposed to learn in fifth grade, the things that we haven't covered yet, this will be our major essentials. For the last week or two, I've been in all kinds of webinars, both with the MISD helping me get technology skills as well as instruction skills of how to do this online. As well as with the other fifth grade teachers in Briarwood and Westwood, along with Mrs. Clark. We've been talking about how to streamline, knowing that we're going to need to shrink a 6-hour school day, really, if you don't count time for silent reading, into about an hour or two every day. And what are the most important things? And this is what our focus is going to be on. We've been given permission from the district to mostly focus on reading, writing, and math. Which doesn't mean that science and social studies aren't important, but there'll be minimal things going on with science and social studies outside of possibly reading some good science and social studies texts and then writing about those science and social studies texts. We'll still have a lot of links to extra things going on, but that's going to be our major focus for those last weeks of school. I think it works out to be about 9 weeks after that. So at this point, as we talk about that, already I'm sure a few of you that your parents or you parents are starting to say, this is already stressing me out. And so what I want you to do right now is something I do with the kids is literally take 3 deep breaths right now. Because I know that a lot of you have started to either have feelings of worry or fear. I have a ton of friends with elementary age kids, and anger and guilt and feelings of inadequacy and worry have really just started to take over. And we just want all those things to pass through, because I think that people have been so worried about how it's going to go. It's kind of crippled them a little bit. And so I want to tell you right now that you're off the hook. I know you don't believe me when I say that, but really, here's what I'm asking you to do. Do what you can. That's it. Do what you can. If you feel like today I have 100% to help my kid, to work with my kid, to care for my kid, then give them 100%. If you feel like you have 60% that day, then give 60%. And if it's been that kind of a day, which we all have those kind of days, and you feel like you have 2% left, then either give your kid that 2% or save your last 2% insanity. And there's going to be days when your kids get all the work done by 11 a.m. and they're just going to be free to play for the rest of the day, and you won't even have to worry about it. There's going to be days when it stretches out a little bit longer. There's going to be days when it just doesn't work out to do any work during the morning or the afternoon, and they're going to have to spend an hour or two in the evening. Do what you can. I also am aware that there are a bunch of different situations that are going on in different families. Some of you are still considered essential workers and you are still going to work every day. Some of you are in a dangerous profession right now in the medical field or otherwise, where you're coming into contact with a lot of people. And I absolutely understand that right now is more important to you than if your kid read their book. And as a teacher, I cringe a little bit when I say that, but I absolutely believe it's true. And I know it's to be true, and I'm okay with that. And so I also know that there's a disparity too in what type of technology is in your home. And some of you have already um, struggled with, how do three of my kids share one laptop? Or some of you have said, we're doing this all over a smartphone, a screen that's 3 inches by 2 inches, and how are we going to make this happen? Well, I want to tell you that, again, take a deep breath. Do what you can. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I will tell you right now that I have already experienced technical difficulties on websites and platforms that have been seamless before, that um, the traffic load is going to be between twice as much and 100 times as much. I've been to 2 webinars this week that had extreme difficulty. The presenters were like, well, the internet's always broken. And that's kind of one of those things that you just have to shrug off and say, yep, I know this isn't working. And so, you know what, kid, you're not going to do your homework right now. Go play. We'll try again this evening. We'll try again later this afternoon or something like that. And so I guess I say all that to say my goal is for your kid to learn something every day, to get the work done. Awesome. I'm going to be planning it so that the goal is that each student can complete the work that's assigned every day. Some of it is going to be work that I'm going to be collecting. Some of it's work that I really can't be collecting. Some of it are things that you'll be able to turn in online. Some of it's things that you'll be able to take pictures of and scan to me. We're going to be piecing together how to make this work. For your students, I know that there's a lot of students here watching with a parent. Students, I really want you to be working in your own independence, which means that in many of your homes, there's a little brother or sister that, let's be honest, needs more parent help, more parent attention than the fifth grader does. These kids are capable of way more than we give them credit for. And it's testing times like this, it's difficult times like this that can really bring out the champion status of these kids, that they can be in charge of themselves, that they can do what they need to do. I remember back in the first week of school, and in the second and third week of school, when we had back to school night, talking to so many of you parents about this idea of figure it out. And I really have been pushing our students all year long, not just to learn stuff, but to learn how to learn. And right now, this is a huge time that these kids are having to learn how to learn. They're having to learn how to find something online that maybe last year they would have just said, Mom, this website's not working. Dad, can you help me fix this? And really at this point, we can't always be there for them. And we're going to need to have them figure it out. And so hopefully the investment that paid off in the first week or two of school that we set up is going to come through on this with us a bunch here. Also, the idea of how things work in Mr. Nitz's room. I spent a ton of time. It's always very nervous for me to not start teaching new topics in the first days of school because I want to just hit the ground running and start getting these kids learning more and more things. But this idea of an investment of time that's going to get them doing the right things, it needs to get built in your house. And so whether that means a physical environment of a desk, whether it means the physical structure of a schedule that has certain hours of the day to do your work and to read, those are going to be things that you're going to have to set up as a family for what's going to work for your kid. So I would say I would rather you skip a day of work and put a poster on the wall. Skip a day of work and build a schedule with your student. Skip a day of work and set up a work environment. Because we know that this is something that's going to last now for the next 9 to 10 weeks. It's worth it. It's worth a day of your time. It's worth an hour of your time to set up those things so that your kid can be successful. Another thing I'll tell you, as far as your involvement as a parent, is that attitude is contagious. And that means that if you just say, well, this isn't real school, it doesn't matter anyways, they're going to take their cue from you. If you say that, why should we even try? This isn't going to matter. It's already over. That attitude is going to be contagious, and that you're going to be stuck with a kid who has the same attitude as you, and then you're probably going to get mad at your kid. Something that I often tell athletes on the sports teams that I coach is fake it until you make it. And basically, what that means is that sometimes there's other people around you that need to believe you feel okay and that need to believe you've got your stuff together. And there's going to be days when your kid is about to lose it. They're going to be close to tears. They're going to be tired. They're going to be wiped out. And you're going to need to fake it till you make it. And that doesn't mean fake it till you make it and do 3 hours worth of homework with them, but fake it till you make it when you feel worn out and depressed, and just admit it and say, yep, I'm tired. But you know what? You can do this. Why don't you do a little bit right now and then save the rest until tomorrow morning? So uh, it's going to be okay. And anything that you can do to help, like I said before, if you can if you can give your kid 100%, give your kid 100%. If you've only got 20% left, give them 20%. If you've got 1% left, well, you better hold on to that 1% and keep yourself sane. A couple questions that have come up. I want to deal with some, I guess, what I call frequently asked questions at this point. I know that a few of these things are things that I know for sure, and a few of these are my best guesses. And I don't want to do that too much, because if you haven't figured anything else out from announcements that continue to come so often, is that things change by the day. And sometimes we can't answer a question about what's going to happen far into the future. And so, one question that's come along is, what about my stuff? I just bought books at the book fair. I've got a coat. I've got something else at Pinewood that I really want. Well, that idea of you getting your stuff, I can tell you that sooner or later, yes, you're going to be able to get your stuff. I know that over the next week or two, Mr. Keene and the rest of the buildings are going to figure out what does it look like for a parent to come in and pick up their stuff. I know that Pinewood is still open 3 days a week for lunch pickups. And so my hope is going to be that if you have something that you need to get, that someone will be able to get it for you, or we will be able to make some sort of arrangements that if you come in to get food and you're in the parking lot, that we're going to be able to get those things. I know that Mrs. Clark and I have talked about what are those things that we're going to be doing in the last 9 weeks of school. And I know that for some of you, getting some things like your SMJ and the next book that we're planning on reading as a classroom, we're gonna possibly get those things in your hands soon. But that's our goal, is if you have personal stuff. One kid said, but Mr. Nitz, my library books to Pinewood are late. We're not too worried about that right now. So some of your school materials, your personal stuff, we will do our best to figure out a way to make that happen. Technology, the Schoology website, for the last 2 days, I've been struggling with it. It's been slow. There's been times when it won't load. And it just reminds me that when that happens, most of us have somewhere between a 1 and a 10-minute frustration point when a website's down of losing it. And today, mine was at about a 2-minute mark. And so what I want you to be able to say, that I'm going to come back to it when I needed to. If you see over in the chat box, you can see that Mr. Keene has just posted up. It says students will be able to pick up items, including personal items and materials for schoolwork. Further information will be coming soon. So that answers that question a little bit more definitively than when I answered it. And so whether that's you'll be able to come in or whether we're going to get it for you, that is still to remain to be seen. And that decision will be made soon. Honestly, getting food in the hands of kids was our #1 priority. Families that needed food and that it was just going to help them, that was our #1 priority. Starting to build the groundwork for school at home was our #2 priority. And now that that's getting some legs under it, that's going to help us. Yes, Schoology, they said it's up 400% right now. You heard Governor Whitmer say the unemployment lines are 4,000%, which means not 4 times as much, 40 times as much. So Schoology, even things like YouTube and Zoom and Remind apps should be pretty clean. But so that's what's up with Schoology. It's going to be our major platform. Those of you in my homeroom, we've been using that for the last 2 weeks. So is Mrs. Clark. We have almost 100% login rate, which means that almost everybody's been on there once to look around. Today, a couple of students and I tried a Schoology conference, which is kind of like Zoom, but it allows for them to work on something and I can see it. And I think it might be a little bit more controlled than Zoom. If you can imagine 31 10-year-olds on your screen at the same time, I'm a little bit nervous about that. And so we might be trying the Schoology app to do it instead. Also, you have heard the term Zoom boom, and basically it means that people have been dropping into public Zooms, whether it's with inappropriate content or just to bother people. And so the Schoology website is a lot more of a restricted traffic. Only people that are in that Schoology, so your students been loaded in there. And so we want to find the best way that we can do that. The Zooms were fun. It was great to see people's faces, but I think that the Schoology app is going to be the way to go. I've been in a webinar every day this week, and will be again tomorrow and on Monday. I've been watching YouTube videos about Schoology, trying to get really a good handle on how that's going to best fit the needs of our student. YouTube, students and parents have both said how much they've appreciated these. So I'm going to be continuing with daily YouTubes that are mostly between 5 and 10 minutes long, that will give you a snapshot of Schoology. So if you ever get on just a day where technology is just not working, whether it's on your end or whether it's the website that's super slow that day, the YouTube video is going to give you the snapshot of the day. And so it might not have it won't have the description and the details that the Schoology webpage does. It's going to be enough to get you doing some work. And you can keep the Schoology tab minimized on a computer if possible. That way, even if there's an issue with the site, you can just open that tab again. Again, you might not be on the exact right page you want, but it could help. I would suggest right now keep it on the math page, because that's the one that seems to raise the most questions and seems to have the most specific help on the Schoology website. I want to continue my reminds as often as needed and as possible. For those of you who hate getting spammed by Mr. Nitz, I can tell you right now that I'm going to over communicate, because there might be things that you don't need to know that somebody else needs to know. There might be things that you didn't know you needed to know that you need to know. So my apologies if it seems like too much. I would rather be over than under communicate. And so that's Remind, YouTube, Schoology, possibly using Zoom, but probably not so much. The Schoology is going to be where a lot of your links are held. For example, I just got an email from the mystery guy, Doug, that we watch in Mystery Science. He's got a live event that he's hosting next Tuesday. So I'm going to be posting those links in Schoology as well as on Remind. It sounds like it's going to be a really cool event. I feel like the country is going to start to have a lot more of those types of things, realizing that kids are at home and wanting to provide that kind of stuff. Last thing about technology, Remind. I think I'm up to about 9 kids on my Remind, and I would really like all my students to follow the Remind, because I post quick notes in there, but important things as well. One of the great things about protecting students that Remind does is that when your student signs up for Remind, it asks them if they're under 13. If they're under 13, then I can't message them individually, and then they can't message me individually. Now, at first, that sounds like something that's going to block them from hearing what they need to hear, but they're going to get all of my mass sendouts, and that's a feature in Remind that protects students. And so I know that you trust me and I trust your student, but this is something that they wanted to protect adults and kids from building inappropriate relationships or putting things on there that don't need to be on there. And so if your student signs up for Remind, they will still get all of my mass sendouts as a member of Mr. Nitz's class, but they won't be able to text me, per se, a question about number 5 on the math page. If that's an issue, then we want to have them be texting on the parents. Okay. That is it that I have. And so I'm going to try to right now give a couple minutes for questions. I know that Mr. Keene has been doing an awesome job answering many of those questions for me in the margin. I'm going to have to learn as a teacher how to talk on my videos where there's a chat box and try to answer those questions too. And I feel like the questions that have been asked have been so important. And so, again, if you don't feel like your question was answered by Mr. Keene or myself in the video, then I want to assure you that he or I or someone will reach out to you via email or Remind and try to answer those questions. After this is over, I'll be trying to review that and look those up as well. There's a couple questions in there about middle school, and I know I'm so bummed for the kids that are field trip there. that was supposed to happen like a week and a half ago, and the idea of signing up for band and all those questions that you have about it. Just trust us. You're going to be able to know what you need to know when you need to know it. Now, you're going to know it in March. Obviously, not March anymore, so it's not going to happen there. But I do know that Mr. Sikora will definitely be planning some things for August that wouldn't have happened if you would have been in school, but will probably need to happen. I know that there's Wolverine days where you can go in, you get your picture taken for your ID, you can get a tour of the building, you can look at a locker, you can see where your classes are. And so I have a feeling that at least what they do on a normal year, probably plus some extra stuff to make our students feel comfortable, is not only is this starting in a new school, but it'll be after being off school for a little bit longer. And so those kinds of things have happened. I also love Mr. Keen's last comment about some form of celebrating our fifth graders. Parents who are working on this already, I know that you're probably bummed at the things that we already put in gear. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, and there's no way we can say today when that would happen, but I would love to be a part of that as well, because normally I don't have a big hand in that. Our wonderful parents and PTCs normally take care of that kind of stuff. But as I'm going to be missing these kids so much, I can't wait to see them again and to be able to do something with them, whether it's later in the summer or whenever that is. Questions about academics and instruction. When we're in our normal classroom, I will often follow this model. I'll teach a lesson. I'll ask for student questions. I'll have some sort of a quick check. Sometimes we just nicknamed them sticky note quizzes, where I hand kids a 3-inch by 3-inch sticky note. They turn them in, and I'm able to quickly figure out who's nailed it, who's halfway there, and who's lost. We meet in groups at the table or wherever we meet. We call them target groups, kids who still haven't hit the target. We may begin to build those types of target groups where I might say, today, only if you need help with writing that we're working on, or only if you need help with math that we're working on, log on for a YouTube live event at 6 p.m. A couple of parents have asked, why are so many things happening late at night? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one is that some of you are still at work. And so whether that means you're not there to help your students and you want to be, that's a big issue, as well as the fact that many of you have technology that your child is waiting for you to bring home, and they can't do any of the work until then anyways. And so sometimes my events will be in the evening, and if they're too late for you, again, don't worry. If you can't do it, you can't do it. It's okay. Again, that idea of do what you can. So thank you so much for listening tonight. I know I talked for a long time. I promised to keep this at 30 minutes, and I think I'm going to still be able to hit that. Again, I hope you've been watching Mr. Keen's answers and just information. I'm sure that's been so helpful. And I really want to look at his last comment. Some sort of office hours for me, and I'm going to make those be very flexible for those of you. We've got some parents who are working nights, which means that mornings might be the only time. Some parents are working long days, might mean that evenings are the only time. And all of you have been super flexible. There's some of you that I have not texted back for a couple hours, and never once did I get, well, where were you when we were working on this? So I'm so thankful for your flexibility. It's been wonderful. So about a week ago, I posted in one of my YouTube videos something that was interesting that I hope you're going to find interesting right now. So I want to take a moment to do it again. And this is a bin of plants. And so this bin I put by my windowsill and planted some seeds in it on the first day that we had no school. And if you watched my YouTube video last week and you saw this part, you're going to hear some repeat, but I feel like I need to go through this again. So these seeds were not meant to be planted in a little rubber container. They were meant to be in my garden. And, at first, for like 3 or 4 days, I was like, they're not going to come up. Maybe the seeds are too old. Maybe the container's too small. Maybe this is dumb. Maybe it's too cold out. I didn't know what was going to happen. And about day 6 or 7, I saw the first one start to peak up. When I showed you the video last week, there were 4 plants, and the tallest one was about 4 inches tall. And I don't know if you can tell by perspective right now, but there are 11 plants, and the tallest one is getting close to a foot tall. So here's why I pull out a plant and show you a plant. Those plants are like your kids. They're not really supposed to be at home. They're supposed to be in school. Those plants aren't supposed to be in a Rubbermaid container. They're supposed to be in a garden. And just when I didn't think it was going to work, they started, against all odds, peeking up out of that dirt. And as they begin to grow, the first couple popped out, and then the next couple, and then the next couple, and pretty much every seed began to sprout. And as they begin to grow, I was just amazed. I mean, there were days when it was visibly taller than it was the day before. Those have only been in there for 3 weeks. Again, the same amount of time exactly that your kid has been at home. Now, what's cool is that I know somewhere around the first or second week of May, I'm going to get to drop those plants and transplant them back in the garden. Now, I know that we can't transplant your kids back at Pinewood in May, but there's going to come a day, and it probably is not going to be until the fall, that your kid's going to be able to transplant back in there. Now, I'd love to be able to transplant those plants today, but it's not time yet. It's too cold out. They'd die at night. They would frost and they wouldn't live. If the people that are trying to say, why don't you just send the kids back to school? It's not time yet. And so I'm asking you with me to watch those plants grow. To day by day, just see them get a little bit taller, a little bit stronger. And those plants come around June or July are going to start to grow beans on them. And they're going to bear fruit. And your kids are going to bear fruit. Your kids, because of their ability to work hard and their ability to overcome adversity, tough times, your kids are going to be able to make it. And I firmly believe that. And I'm so proud of the work that they've done and the way that you have been there. I'm going to keep showing pictures of these plants to you guys through the next 10 weeks, and we're going to start celebrating. And the day that I get to move them, I know that we won't get to move schools, but I want you to cheer with me, and I want you to cheer those plants on. You guys are so awesome. Just the fact that even a bunch of you are with me tonight, giving up a half hour at the end of a really long day, probably after sitting listening to the governor for an hour. Now you're listening to some guy on YouTube talk for a half hour. But this guy loves your kids, and I know that that's why you're listening, because you believe that I care about your kids and what's best for them. Mr. Keene has got my back in everything. He's been really supportive. Mrs. Clark and I have really been collaborating a bunch. We are very different from each other, and we complement each other well. There's been times when she's been my tech savior, when I don't know what to do, that she's been helping me out. And so we're working together, as well as the teachers at Briarwood and Pinewood. Well, I didn't stick to my promise of 30 minutes. It's getting close to 33 minutes here. So I'm going to get ready to sign off. Parents, feel free. I know that I am comfortable with my Remind app blowing up in the next hour. Send them along, and I'll try to answer your questions if we didn't get them to those questions on the app tonight. I really would like to do this from time to time, focused more at parents. Whether you need a sanity check, whether you need a chance to ask questions, whether you need to just remember that somebody else is going through the same thing you're going through, and you just need a little bit of peace. So I'm going to get ready to sign off. I will submit my next YouTube video by, usually it's somewhere in the middle of the day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Try to get that out there. Go to Schoology. I say it all the time. It's going to be your best one-stop shopping for all the things that you're going to need to help your kid. And really what you need to do is you need to get them logging into Schoology. I'm so thankful that you've been helping them to do that. It's time to cut the cord. It's time for our students to start doing that on their own. I miss you guys, and I want everybody to stay safe and have a great night.